Franklin?
No.
I guess that's why they're not here.
I guess so, they're members of the board, they should be involved
Yeah.
in this, that's. Hey,
I let John know this too, but just to let you folks know, John will have to get a key for the, to be able to get in and out of the graveyard.
okay,
Into them facilities, so, when you get things kinda worked out, if that's where you're going, or whoever, whatever the situation, they will have to get a key either from, I think Extension probably has one, Virginia has one in her office, but, there will be a key, because it's only open from 4 till, or from 6 till 4, Monday through Thursday. Any other hours it's locked, so.
sounds good, thanks, Scott.
Yep.
See ya.
See ya.
I sure appreciate you coming down, John.
No problem. Reminds me of the legislature. Kind of been doing stuff like this since '78 is when I started doing mosquito control.
Really?
Up in Helena, an accountant, he had one of his clients was mosquito board chairman there at the time. Didn't like what was going on. Of course, they'd all, like we were talking earlier, they all had started. There's only, 32 of them in the state. But it seemed like all about the same time, everybody got tired of mosquitoes, late 60s, early 70s, and they put all these together. And a gentleman named Ken Quickenden, State Board of Health at the time is what it was called. He was a PhD / could actually talk to him. And he didn't talk up here. And he actually went around and helped everybody start their mosquito districts with what we call the initial survey, which means you literally have to spend days trying to sort and figure out because you didn't have the aerial photography or anything like that. And then they all said, well, let's try and get rid of mosquitoes. And it sounds like Townsend's about that same time frame. So there's only 2 that are county-wide, Cascade County and Flathead County.
Huh.
But that gets to be another, then you gotta have quite a bit of money, at least when you have a district, you can kind of control a little bit of what goes on. Unless you're at the Bureau. I suppose this is an
Right,
official meeting, so I gotta be nice.
and we should have a meeting with them and
Yeah,
kind of bring them
what
up
I
to
thought I'd
speed.
do real quick, I'm usually try to be real quick and then people have questions. If you guys don't have in front of you, let's talk about the Bureau just a little bit.
Okay.
Are you familiar with what they call a memorandum of understanding? I have a copy of that. Do you have them?
We do, but it's in the extension office,
Okay. I
so
wanted
we
to go
don't have
over
it
a
with
couple
us.
little things, so I didn't realize I had one more copy.
Okay, no problem.
And I underlined, it's the part that always frustrates me. I've got my copy here.
You can have mine if you want.
The interesting part, we went from, I used to have a contract for $20-ish thousand separately with the Bureau. And it would be separate from the mosquito district itself. And we'd come in here 1 to 3 times and spray, and we'd start doing some survey work, usually about, I think it was the first part of June. We finally discovered part of it was because they kept squishing the money down to now it's $8,000. But if you, I'm gonna go back and forth, but if you look, it says primary objective, and people forget sometimes. For me, primary objective is to find mosquito larvae, get rid of them, and then the ones that get by or come from all over. Then you end up doing some adulticiding, but here, you notice how to identify where and when. Then the second part, control efforts can occur. So over the years, I've always had the idea that it was supposed to have been, basically get rid of larvae so you don't have them coming out of the wildlife refuge. But if you read this, and it's not that long, that's not, somewhere they decided to manipulate the English language a little bit. And then the second part, I don't remember what I didn't want to do this. Then you go over to the duration of this is for 10-year period, and I think you'd made a comment about a contract. This one is 10 years, so in order to change it, and it does say in through their termination or implementing or whatever a person wants to do, then it all has to end up, shall not exceed $8,000. Well, I find I had to tighten it up, and it's chicken and egg, a sidebar to all this. Somebody says, well, gee, you're doing pretty well with $8,000. Well, yeah, and 24 may be a little too much, especially considering the fact the last several years had been a wet year and then a dry year and somewhere in between. It changes a little bit, but it'd still be nice. What we're basically using granules, BTI granules, Bacillus thuringiensis. You know, they're fairly expensive, so it's roughly $42.50 an acre for what we apply to shallow standing water. But we've knocked down, we only survey, we know now, which I guess according to here, primary, identify how, where, and when, that if the lake is 4 feet or greater, or better to say, if it's 4 feet or less from full pool, that typically is when we start finding larvae. So I guess to go in and do a bunch of survey work before then is somewhat pointless. Unless it has been several wet years in a row, then there's gonna be higher water table, and that probably isn't true. Because what happens as it comes up, you'll end up with what, you don't have to have that map.
I can get it real quick.
Would you?
Yeah,
I
you
wanted to
bet.
show you a couple real quick things.
This year sounds like it's gonna be 4 feet below pool, isn't it?
Yeah,
I saw that.
when it's full, it'll be
When
4
it's full,
feet
yeah.
below.
No,
Yeah, they're talking about it. Unless there is some rain that happens to come, but boy, sure makes you wonder.
Scary.
But yeah, I was born and raised on a place in Flaxville between Scobie and Plentywood, so basically a farm boy, had to come to the city to make a living, because even though I'm the oldest, my younger brother decided he wanted to stay worse than I do. So my point of that is, I tend to watch that anyway, not just because I do mosquito control. But what we do is watch the river flows now, and that helps us determine somewhat. So I really wanted to point out, slide that way. So that would be situated like it should be. But what starts happening most of the time, we end up spraying in through here, and a little bit of, where's the road, right here, and then we dabble, and then end up right about in here, and then we do up along here with the airplane. But that's usually what we check. But what happens if this stays full for 3 or 4 years in a row, then the water table comes up, then you'll start seeing more shallow standing water in this area. When there was flood irrigation in through here, I know this is kind of fast, but just stop me and ask a question. There was a lot more subbing. We used to spray this 2 or 3 times a season, but we're down now to chasing certain areas because, well, I guess there's some sprinklers in here now too. Brian Rogers, we have not done anything in this area because he's always screamed and hollered, I'll call it, said he would do it himself. He's a dermatologist from Bozeman.
I know him well.
He used to spend Sunday afternoons calling me on the phone when I was spraying liquid phenthyon, organophosphate for larviciding. Well, you know, it kills everything, and I'm thinking, I'm not going, I just sat there and listened to him a bunch of times, and he convinced the Hans that mosquito control is why they didn't have all their birds, which isn't true. I mean, if you don't have grasses, et cetera, and you're always moving equipment around, they're not gonna stick around. I mean, they'll come and go. So, it'd be nice if I could somehow get back down in there in a politically correct way, I guess, and we probably would find that there might be a few. What we've also found, when the Greg Johnson, the entomology department there at MSU, they found, thousands and thousands of adult mosquitoes in one night. At the holding reservoir, which is in the Helena Valley, that's where irrigation water comes, they take 2 gallons of water and turn a turbine that pumps 1 gallon uphill right from below the dam there, and fills that holding reservoir, and then of course the city gets some water out of there. But in one night, they had 34,000 mosquitoes. I think I mentioned that to you.
You did, yeah.
And they, of course, interpolate or extirpolate,
Extrapolate.
thank you,
You're welcome.
how that goes. And a pound of mosquitoes is a little over 1 million from American Mosquito Control Association. That's their, so they do, when there's that many, you do have to do some of those things. So a small area can produce a lot of mosquitoes. What we find out here, probably, I'll just pick a percentage, 80% of them stay right there. It's incredible. When you go out to do survey work, where's the road? Usually right about there, you don't want to get out of your truck. But the guys have to do their survey work. And then you move back away. It's incredible. For the amount of light, the CO2, that's the main attractant of a mosquito, female mosquito to a human. For as many mosquitoes as you can find there, and I'd like to be able, like I said, if we were back to 20,000, I would probably come down and spray 50 acres, whatever. But we end up waiting until we have to balance, back to my chicken egg, have to balance, okay, do we do it now, and then later, if it comes up even more, then we're stuck because we only have so much money. It's a compromise. And of course, what one gentleman used to do that worked there, he used to use that and told me in private a couple of times, he goes, well, here's all you've used. And I said, well, I'll share something with you. Unfortunately, I guess I'll never be a millionaire because I take my job pretty seriously. One of the reasons is there's enough people out there, you're gonna run across somebody who knows more than you do. You always do. Well, so you might as well do it according to standard mosquito control practices, which says the water levels aren't there and the larvae aren't there, we're not gonna spray. So this particular person used that over a period of 10 years to gradually pull that down. And I used to have to sit here in meetings and just listen to those people talk about how wonderful it was when we all shared in the pain, so to speak. And then I'll just zip up because I wasn't too happy trying, because I had something pretty good going with them as far as trying to do that. It was a separate contract. And then somebody somewhere in the Bureau got the bright idea to try to combine, and what they were really trying to do was shift monetary responsibility basically to the small folks, if you will.
Sure.
And like I said, that took quite a few years to do, so the 8,000 should at least be 16, I think we probably would be fine. But we need to, instead of finding the best, what I call the best time, the most cost-effective time, in my opinion, to try to kill as many mosquitoes as we can, knowing that we could have gone in earlier and probably should have had something a little bit less in terms of acreages in after that main one. And that typically now occurs between the second, when I looked at my records, it's between the 2nd of July and the 12th or 15th of July is when there seems to be a peak of larvae. That doesn't seem to change much, that window. Usually it's right around the 4th of July. But I'd like to go out, if we had the extra money, and probably do a little bit of spraying the end of June, when they're just starting to show large numbers. Because we obviously are still not getting as many as we should. The other thing we should do that can't happen is because there isn't enough. This stuff, when it starts subbing, it'll sub up in this little area and then it might sub up here, but it tends to kind of get water. And you'll end up with in a water year where it's fairly wet, you'll end up down in here with some shallow standing water which has larvae in it. So it kind of varies, but basically it's just right here. There is some in here when the water's high. But what you get is the pressure of, the lake kind of pushes back underground and raises that up because there's no direct connection, so in a lot of the areas there for water that's standing in the grasses. And it's protected. Larvae are air breathing, so anytime you get a protected area of water less than a foot deep, you're going to have larvae. And then the sun beats down on it a little more, it heats up the water, so it happens fairly fast too.
Where is Highway 284 there?
It is right here. Yeah, these are the district boundaries. Somebody designed them, I'm not sure who did that, kind of interesting. And if you notice, all this pinkish stuff is Bureau land. So, when I adulticide by air, or when people start driving around with trucks, technically, we can't do very much in this valley unless we had the good graces of the people. I'd love to be able to just fly along here. But I have to be careful where I fly, and, you know, it's, cause they don't want adulticide, which I'm sure we could figure it out somehow. So in part, you know, there's probably a gradual influx from the north. Of course, they used to tell me in private, wish you weren't even here, we wouldn't have a mosquito district at all, so. But I probably shouldn't say something like that in the public meeting. But it just frustrates me.
Question now, out there in the lake or any place where the water's deeper, it doesn't generate mosquitoes in.
Well, what
Now they're
happens,
along the edges.
it can, but what happens, if there's eggs, if they're what they call semi-permanent or temporary water mosquito, she tends to lay an individual egg normally in the soil, at the water's edge, wherever, during that year. So if the water is down, you get a bunch of eggs laid, and they are viable up to 6 to 8 years. Some important people think 10 years.
Can Garrett kind of interrupt you guys when you're done with this?
Mhm.
Do you know how long you're gonna be?
Tell me when to shut up, I'll leave.
He just had something come up, he needs to talk to you three about, so.
Oh.
It can,
How about
he can
11
probably,
o'clock when he's
he
there?
can wait.
Would 11
Yeah,
o'clock
I can
work?
wait. He can wait a little while,
11 o'clock?
11?
That's fine. Is that not gonna interrupt with Sheriff Ludwig?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's fine.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Sorry to bother you.
If not, I'll go find him.
Yeah, no, it's because, you know, there's lots of passion about some things, but you can get on overload pretty fast too. Sound bites for the news, NBC, if you really think about it, it's like 7 seconds. So
Right.
I learned
Yeah.
lobbying, you can only say so much to people and come back later. But anyway, for working with those folks, that's basically according to the memorandum of understanding is what we're stuck with, so. But in theory, if you look and why underlines are put in pink, when Tom was here, sometimes you get very technical, and I'm sure that was, you know, written to minimize the amount of application. You know. But anytime everybody seems to think, I used to think too, until now, it's almost like you almost need to somehow watch adult mosquitoes, but when the uninitiated are sitting there paying taxes, they go, and I listen to it too, which is fine, that's part of my job, I've always figured. Well, you know, if you're not spraying, then you're not killing mosquitoes, you're not doing any good, and you're wasting my money. I've heard that more than once, but when it comes to a surveillance program, like traps or now CO2 traps, they're almost required, so you can kind of figure out what would be nice, no, it probably won't happen, to double check. I'm saying, I'm not, of course I haven't been in it, so I don't know, but I'm kind of still convinced that some mosquitoes come in from here, and gradually you'll see a drifting, I call it, of mosquitoes. It's not when most of them hatch, all of a sudden they come this way, because 80% of them, 75, whatever, they stay right there. I don't understand it, but it can be so miserable in there, you can't even get out of your truck. And as you get a quarter of a mile away, there's a few. So they tend to stay.
Of course, with much of a north wind, it sure ram across.
Well, that ends up being a problem, and what I've noticed too, especially for aerial adulticiding, it could be, I'll watch, as I'm coming from Helena, I watch the wave action, and usually what I will see, and it seems like about the time there needs to be some adulticiding done, there's a breeze, 5 to 15 miles an hour, it comes from the southeast to the northwest, and it bumps up against the cooling of the air coming from the other way, as well as the water itself. So what you'll end up with one year when Jack was on, I called him up, I landed here, the wind was like 15 to 20 miles an hour, you know, I didn't do anything there, it just blows away. And it's calm over there, I knew that, so I called him up, and I stood on the wing of the airplane with my cell phone. And I said, hear that? Yeah, it's not over here. I said, well, can't do much, because people don't tend to believe you, because when you're up in the air, I do that at between 200 and 250 feet. Well, there can be in the evening, there can be wind upstairs and not down, so I have to make that decision at times too. So there tends to be a movement of mosquitoes. But if you were to pick, and I'm sure most anyone, including Greg Johnson, has already said, yeah, that is where most of them come from. How they get to Townsend, it doesn't happen overnight. It's kind of an intriguing thing. Like in Helena, Fox Ridge area, that northeast corner of our district, they come from that holding reservoir. I always thought so, but you couldn't really prove it. Of course, you can't do anything on there unless you get the good graces of the Bureau, and it usually takes 3 to 5 years for anything of that nature to happen. And we have a new person who lives right there. That was her first question to me when I introduced myself to her last fall was, do you do any mosquito control work on the holding reservoir? So there are some people in the Bureau that do understand that mosquitoes come from areas that they control, even though, and I've been fed the same thing, that's, you know, no, they don't come from our lake, they come from away from the lake. Well, that's really not true, so. But there are certain areas that is true, if it's more than a foot deep and it's not protected, wherever you're breathing, so they grab up, poke their little breathing tube through, and there's wave action, they can't, so they end up drowning. That is why in deep water you won't find mosquito larvae. They just don't get laid there, the eggs. Permanent water mosquitoes, of course, she'll lay her eggs that year, spring, and gradually increase in numbers, i.e. Culex tarsalis and Pipiens, which carry West Nile, right on the water itself. You know, what's called an egg raft, about the size of a pinky fingernail. Progeny's 50-50, which I find intriguing. 50% male, 50% female. So. And then so this limits right now what we can get accomplished relative to
I
the
assume you
bigger picture.
worked with them many times trying to get more.
Well, like I said, we did have 20. Initially, it was, I think we, this is way back. I didn't take too much time, but I do have all the books clear back to when I first started. But it just seemed like there was a 10 or 12. Of course, things didn't cost as much back then, especially chemicals, etc. for the products to control them as larvicides. But the bigger thing, there was enough problem around here without the lake when there was flood irrigation. I mean, that's how long ago I fished it, but that's gradually gone away. When, you know, Deep Creek flows, then there's some down in here. But I would have to be able to, I haven't heard from Brian, and I think he probably, don't know if he does anything there or not. But I have never, in the last, I don't know, 8 or 10 years, I've not done any survey work there. But I'm still not totally convinced that somewhere in here that they don't, I know for several years they did, but they put out Alticid, so whether or not it did any good, Alticid is a larvicide that does not actually kill the mosquito larvae. But, and I'm trying to find a proper word, but basically they won't come out of the pupa skins, they don't have legs, they don't have wings, they don't die. But what you're supposed to do when you use a lot of Alticid is also have a surveillance program so that you can, and that doesn't just mean one trap. For example, if we knew this was an area, you'd probably have a trap here, a trap in the middle, and a trap here. And if, when in other areas you started seeing, you know, mosquitoes starting to hatch, then you would really start trying to watch your traps. Because if in a week, you know, 3 to 5 days after they hatch here, they would probably be in town. And if that didn't occur, then you knew that Alticid was working. Where with BTI or, well, it used to be fenthion you can tell because you go back 6 to 12 hours later, 24 hours, they're gone. Because you did it before. before, you come back, there's none. So you know, they're not going anywhere, you know you've done good, so you can come back, but with Almond, you don't know, you don't have a second chance to go back and, you know, and reapply something. You're just not gonna know until, cause they're there. You would have to use something different, they're always wiggling. You check, go back 2 weeks later, check, they're still wiggling, till they leave.
Their eggs have to be very, very small.
Very tiny, like specks. Yeah, it's really interesting how, and alongside that, it's like, well, how in the world do you end up with West Nile? And because 1 to 3 times when they, you know, they bite, but more and more they're finding out a female mosquito bites once for that brood of eggs that she's trying to create, manufacture, whatever you wanna use for that term. But the antigen stays inside the body. And it's temperature related as to how fast or it will grow and or multiply. It ends up flowing through her body into her salivary glands, which has a formaldehyde-like substance. That's what that sting is. It's actually an anticoagulant, so that when they move around and dip, it doesn't plug up their proboscis. So they are actually kind of complex in a certain way. So all of a sudden, third time then, they bite, and birds are the main reservoir of West Nile, because a lot of them, you know, the flyway here, but on the east side of Montana is a big flyway. If you go up into the west side, Flathead County and Lake County, you know, they thought, well, we're gonna get West Nile here too. Well, they finally did, but through horses. But, you know, did they stay, did they go? Usually they figure that out too. But they're learning more, and it's still, but it's gotta be hot, 90 to 100 degrees. That's when it just speeds up, becomes more viral, and you end up with then showing some signs of West Nile and various things. And the county, Lewis and Clark County bought finally a RAMP machine. It's an acronym, and I can't remember the term. It's used for more than just finding out whether or not 20 to 50 mosquitoes, female mosquitoes, you mix them up, put all their kind of little chemicals in there, run into a machine, you come up with a number that's in the 600s, like, gotta go that area and probably do a little more adulticide. Is kind of what that would, the reason to have a RAMP machine, but that's what, $10,000–12,000. But they said we could, if some districts wanted to work with some more surveillance, you know, if they could collect them, but you have to be able to do that, you know, on time and do that. Because mosquitoes don't wait, that's the big frustration. You know, that's why in the contract, part of that says time is of the essence. But, you know, you just gotta kind of go along with the flow that way. So that's bottom lines. The other thing I think Virginia had taken care of is the NOI, basically says, can I have permission to do what we've been doing all along? It's called a notice of intent. If I wanted to, if you hadn't gotten it, I don't know. I do have just a couple extra copies of that, because I know you got lots of paper, but that's what they would look like for the
Thank
initial
you.
one.
Thank you.
So are you thinking that, she may have taken care of
I
this for
think so.
this year?
I was talking with Larry, the weed coordinator, we were trying to remember if it's once every 5 years. When I get back home, I thought driving down, I'm going, oh, I can't remember. I think it's once every 5 years, so I think it's dealt with, but I wanted to double check.
Okay,
So that before we apply something to the water, that,
So if not, I'll have to get one of these signed, is that right?
yeah, you guys would sign it and send it back to the Department of Environmental Quality. But I'll double check and let you know.
okay.
When I get back, I need to know. And, yeah, primaries look for whether or not they have mosquitoes, and then the secondary, and they'll show up about the memorandum, so is control efforts. So I think that's another reason, that's how they got down to $8,000.
Do you think that it would be wise to schedule a early meeting with BOR and FWP, and just let them know it's kind of a new day? We would like to increase that to 8,000.
16,
yeah,
or I'd buy another 8,
yeah,
I think we can probably get by it that way. Actually, I guess probably in the winter time, because they're slow and I know the Bureau, I'm supposed to have a 5-year contract to work around Goose Bay. And I still haven't heard from them, and that was back in November. That's how they work. If you don't remember or find the time to constantly bother them in a nice, legitimate fashion, I don't know, their culture is a little different than mine.
there was a, article in the paper last year about the mosquitoes and how bad they were. And Virginia said some things that really got FWP upset. Basically, it was talking about the ponds and the fact that there's so little we can do because of the money and other things. Based on how upset they were, I'm just wondering if there isn't an opportunity for us to maybe, and with Goose Bay under construction, maybe now is a good time to start, let them know what we want and find out what we need to do to get it, and,
There is a new Tom Carlson too, he's been there, what, a year?
yeah, yeah, and we've been working with them on another project. So we've got a good relationship we've started, and with Ryan. So maybe, maybe now is a good time to,
Talk to him.
yeah. You can bring donuts as a bribe. You don't get chocolate unless you work with us.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't, yeah, and on that kind of note, how would it be best to approach Brian to be able to get back on his ground? I mean, we have that right, but, according to the Montana code.
We could invite him to the meeting as well with FWP and BOR. I don't think that, I think he's pretty, has his mind made up. Maybe Chuck's someone we could work with though. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, it'd be nice to be able to get back on there,
Yeah,
so. And then I'm not quite sure if what I went ahead and did was made a couple of presumptions,
good.
and if that's not the way you're supposed to, so what I did was just fill out or put in paper what I would like
Thank
to
you.
do, and it's funny, depending on which county, Lewis and Clark and Gallatin have a contract that's probably about that thick, thanks to their particular county attorneys. And most of my other districts are usually like this, so it varies. And what I've done is, and each district is a little bit different too. This has seemed to work for Townsend, so it's it's in the middle there. That's actually made part of the contract separate, and then I've also included what would be, in theory, the billing, just so you have an idea of how I do that. Yeah, that's basically what happens. And not all of these occur, but I made to help you understand from before, I just made up some bills that would reflect a wet year, so to speak. And in a drier year, of course, some of that wouldn't even be there, but I didn't know what was intended. I, again, made an assumption. I worked where I did everything here once before, and then I think there was some interest where there were some people that wanted to, and I think that lasted, that wanted to help actually do some mosquito control. So we relinquished the ground adult deciding at that time several years ago, and I put that back in as an assumption that I just go do what I do for a living, which is do mosquito control and report to those people who want to be my boss, so.
Would we be wise in putting Dr. Rogers on the board, mosquito board?
Here's what happened in Cascade County when they did that. He's not like this particular person, obviously. When I say that, this man just likes screaming and hollering and say, no, we can't have anything, so, and he's a farmer on the Sun River. They put him on the board, things have changed. In fact, he made their life so miserable, they finally said, you know what? Why don't you stay home? I don't know now, I just haven't talked to him in so many years. So what I thought I would do is actually call him up and say, you know, the Broadwater County and Towns Mosquito District is thinking about having me do some additional work, and I like to be able to get underground and do some larvicide. I should say some survey work and some possible larvicide, just to see what it would say. I'm sure you'll remember me. No, we got along good. I made sure that would happen. There's times I didn't really want to, but yeah, I'd be watching TV on a Sunday afternoon and I'd have to listen to him for probably an hour or so. That's part of my job. It didn't bother me that much. So I've had a lot of strange things happen. So anyway, this is what's going through my mind. So, and if you notice on the first page, in the consideration, it's up to, and then of course a set amount, and then on that same page, the last page of the contract, it also says in there on number 9 that there's some cross checks, so that I just don't take all your money and run, which I don't want to do anyway. It's just to help make people feel comfortable, because each year most years are pretty much the same. But if it's a really wet year, there'd be more work, and this year there's probably gonna be a lot less, so. Anyway, that's what I'd like to do. And if you need buy your fogger, or I don't know what you guys have in mind, but I've been there before down here where I bought the fogger and worked for several years, and then, like I said, I can't remember exactly. Nobody was mad at me, I made sure of that, but there was just enough interest at that time, and then the pool of labor kind of went away after about 3 years, and that's, I think, what people find out. The young people don't really want to, they like to push on glass. That's how they like to work. So. I do too, I guess, but not like that. Anyway, that's the short of.
One thing I would like to do is have the rest of our board members here.
Mhm.
There's 5 of us, and there's only 3 of us here today, which is unfortunate, and run this by the entire board.
Sure.
But I'll tell you what, after last year's mosquito season, I don't think a single citizen would say, don't sign this contract. We
Well,
need
and it's-
something done.
Right, and it's flexible, so.
Yeah, and I think it looks fair as far as addressing what our needs are. We've got some nice growing areas for mosquitoes.
Correct, and depending on how they're looked at, it can create a lot of the problem, part of the problem, but to me, it's a slow accumulation. And at what point, it would be nice to, I guess, if there was a way to find like $5,000-ish to actually set up a surveillance program, at least for 3 years. So we could actually figure out when and where they move around. We could probably keep the frustration level down. When when a person waits too long, but I'm not sure, that was a question to you folks, I'm not sure at what time I have an idea or how fast they arose the numbers of female mosquitoes to where they created a problem. If it was, they're here for a week, which I wouldn't be surprised, and then they kind of tone down for a week or 2, and then all of a sudden, around the time the lake comes up, then there seems to be even more. I don't, excuse me, I don't know that. And in some years, usually between wet and dry, they can actually persist a little more, or they'll travel 1 to 3 miles for a blend meal in Montana. They go up to 40 miles. They've had radioisotopes. They actually zap some female mosquitoes and let them go, and they put out Geiger counters in the lake traps. This was in New Jersey about 40, almost 50 years ago. But that's there. Normally they go far enough to get a blood meal, so could be a quarter of a mile.
So that means getting hold of us and
Yes.
sucking our blood.
Yes, exactly. And of course, Culex, they mostly like, well, it's reptiles, animals, and us, basically. one called Culicida internata is huge. They're about a half an inch on average. If you're riding a horse, they're not bothering you, but they're just kind of bloodying up the side of a horse. You can almost assume that it's a permanent water mosquito, and it's that particular one. So, yeah, they're intriguing mosquitoes. Pest.
Hey, John, that surveillance program you talked about,
Yes.
would that be a $5,000 surveillance program over 5 years? Or
year.
5,000 per year for
Right.
5 years?
Right, well, or three minimum, I think we could find out some things, but what we would need is, like I said, I would prefer somewhere in here, probably 2 traps, and probably walk them here, and maybe something like this. And what you end up doing, you can make it a lot more, but, you know, of course, you have to have somebody. I also work with, now Grant Hokett at Carroll College. He got $1 million loan. I thought it was to actually help with West Nile. What he got the loan for was to teach his students how to set up labs, and they had to have a project to be able to set a lab up for. So they picked West Nile virus. This is several years ago. When I figured that out, I was like, oh, because I was getting frustrated because it didn't seem like we were getting the same level of service, because he kind of was overlapping with Greg Johnson down at MSU. So that's when we found out. So he has plenty of students that don't mind helping out. And so if that could work, that's probably what I would end up having happen, is one of his students would be working for me to do some of this.
Mhm.
They like doing those things. Well, it's what they want to do.
Mhm.
So,
And it makes sense that it would be a smart move for us, because in the coming years, we'd know where to target
or when.
early on. Yeah, yeah.
Because I think what we're starting to see is less and less. It's real easy when there's water here and it's flood irrigation. There's water here, it's flood irrigation. And it just went on through. You know, the drain just went through here. You just knew you go in and dip, yep, got to spray. 2 weeks later, you're gonna have to come back. It's not that way anymore. You have to look for them, figure out where they are. And it's not large acreages.
If we would decide on this study, would you do one this year, start it this year?
I'd like to, yes, yeah. Because I think with what we're working with, probably can work. You know, what am I trying to say? Make for an efficient, i.e. less adult mosquitoes. But at times, no matter what you do, you're still gonna have these peaks, but hopefully we can not keep them so long.
Mhm.
That would be nice.
And one of the things I do is during the fair, you know, there's a tendency to do some adulticide too. But if we could find out, it might say, okay, we're gonna actually adulticide a week before. Because that's when they moved in, instead of waiting until, here again, not making bad comments about how things were done. We're getting down to a point, I think, I'm repeating myself somewhat different way, that it's getting drier and drier, so we still have mosquitoes. Now what's going on? And I think that's the only way it's gonna actually get better for everybody. No, I don't have stock in CO2 traps or anything like that. It's just, there almost has to be a surveillance program. You're not killing mosquitoes, and some people still whine to me even, you know, because they know that's what I do. You know, you're wasting my money. Well, not really, but you can think what you want. You know, I don't get upset. I just try to explain to them, and 2/3 of them understand, and the other third you're never going to change. So, but if there's some way we can incorporate a surveillance program, and after it's been worked for a while, it should be just like we know, 4 feet and below, you don't have to spend a lot of money doing a bunch of survey work like we used to do, trying to find them, because it's like, you know, this doesn't happen. So.
How did you ever get in this business?
You know, my accountant, yeah, I think I mentioned a little bit about that. He's sitting there one day and he goes, John, this other client I have, he's the mosquito board chairman in Helena Valley. Doesn't like the people that are, because they were just starting up. Just didn't seem like there was anything going on. Sure, I'll try it. I was in the spraying business for 3 years from the farm down here at Gonda Aircraft Mechanics in Helena, so I decided to stay here. But if I can't, you know, if we can't farm together, I might be able to a little, and then it's a good place to have a base of operations too. And it all just happened. And 2 or 3 years later, I'm going, I don't know if I like it. Cause even more so than now, you know, there is enough money and there's enough knowledge, and like I said, there's less water, but back then, most districts had between us, oh my gosh, they need about twice to 3 times the money they had, so I was getting a lot of abuse back then about not spending all this money, not getting much done. But it's gotten a lot better. And it's like that big book, you know,
Yeah.
standard mosquito control practices, I mean, you can only do certain things. I know in a couple of small towns, there's some local folks that, they got a fogger and they said, well, that's all we're gonna do and that's the best thing to do. Well, the best thing is you get rid of the water, because between egg and adult, it's all aquatic. In fact, most big districts, Sacramento, the South Shore, along the Gulf, they had more tied up in their drain. Most of them were big old, they tile put in actual drain ditches underground.
Oh, mhm.
And that's what they were doing to do mosquito control, was the mechanical part, get rid of the water. There are no water, you're not gonna have them. They have to, egg to adult. Second is larviciding, and in between that is some surveillance, and then most expensive in a given time frame. Although people hear it, and when you go by, yes, it's true, knock them down, so that's what they see, and it benefits them directly, but so it's hard to convince some in the public that that is actually the most expensive and most costly form of mosquito control, but it does work, and it is needed at times, but yeah, this is a frustrating district for me.
I think it'd be good to, you know, Ryan's a new person here now, stuff, and have this meeting set up with, Fish and Game and, BOR, and have this, Rogers come to it. And
Well,
the thing is, probably wouldn't, well, I'm sure it wouldn't get anything this year, we would just keep pounding them.
well, yeah, of course, with a certain person gone from Bureau, I think we'll probably have a little better luck there too. That's when I figured out he was an engineer, he didn't care about anything but the tinkering of things, so. Well, I'll give him a call, if you don't mind. I'll do that and
Please
then
do.
report back, just to see.
Yeah,
Between
Now,
now and this weekend.
okay, so you're gonna call and try about getting the meeting set up, is that what you're gonna do?
No, for Brian, I wanna
Oh,
test
but it's
him.
Brian, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
For that. But if you notice on the back I've always been a part of, but I've always, as a private contractor, I've been quite aware that at times I just have to sit in the corner of the back of the bus, because that's what I am. You know, I'm not a commissioner, I'm not Fish and Game, I'm not whatever you might say. So I do have opinions, but sometimes they have to stay in the back too, so.
and maybe what would be smart before meeting with them is to talk with you and have you give us some questions or direction that you want us to go on behalf of the county. And then that way you can sit in the back and we can go ahead and ask the questions that you would have.
But you could be asked for expert opinion.
That's true, but I have also found out giving that, and that's why I said some private meetings I had with several, I can't even think of what they're called, it wasn't Paul, it was some before. He brought me in his office, he said, I want to talk to you, and he says, you know, if you, and he did say this, if you weren't in this business locally, we wouldn't be having these conversations. He was telling me that he wished I'd go away.
Which we don't wanna, we don't wanna aid at all. No, I think this has been really good.
Well, and if I moved around, sometimes I feel it's better to do that, so you kind of get little tidbits instead of a structured, you go from here and then you're falling asleep before you get to something good, so hopefully it benefited you.
It did.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sounds good?
Okay.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot, John.
Bet. I will report, talking to Brian.
All right,
Nothing, but I'll probably have it a couple of days, because who knows, he might not answer right away. Whoops, you gotta go get something.
Good talking to you, John.
and we'll be in touch with you too about FWP and BOR and the board.
Yeah, and if they, yeah, who knows? But with Taryn, I think is her name. She's pretty new, like less than a year.
Karen with FWP?
No, Bureau.
Oh, okay.
Do I have fact? Sorry.
No, this is good.
She would probably be the first person to talk to,
Okay,
because I know she's interested in getting rid of mosquitoes, but I think she's gonna find out that as she climbs the ladder of request, it's probably gonna get tougher for her. Taryn Preston. No, I don't think I spelled it right. T-A-R-E-N. I don't think
Okay.
it's Y-N, but I don't. 475-3927.
475-3927. All right.
I'll get out of your hair.
What was that name again for you?
Taryn?
Karen or Taryn?
Taryn with a T.
Okay.
Thanks much, John, for coming down.
Yeah,
You
bet.
thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I got to liking this kind of work actually after this many years. Yeah, 78, what's that?
Oh,
I
man.
didn't think, 40, 37? 38
Almost
years?
40, yeah.
Still,
Wow.
still like to do it. It's fun.
That's cool. Maybe we'll give you some more work then. Thanks, John.
Yep.
He sure knows his stuff.
Well,
He
everybody
does.
knows mosquitoes.
He does.
Whoa,
And those different,
I mean, all the different
pesticide
chemicals and
groups.
what they work on and,
I would like to, before we do anything else, get the board together. And, you know, we shouldn't be doing this without them. That's a bad call.
Well, what we need is to get the, if we get this set up with.
No, you
and
set
then-
it up
and
with the
have them-
board.
Well, yeah, then
This
the
is
board
not a
can be there.
commission thing, this is the board, the mosquito board. So when can we do that? Do you wanna call and see when it's good for Elsie and Chuck?
Well, it depends on our, when we can get the meeting set up with the Bureau and,
No, Franklin, this has to be two different things. We are not the mosquito board. There's 2 and possibly 3 other people that are also the mosquito board. We need to get all of those folks together. We need to share this with them, and then we need to get their buy-in and support on having a secondary meeting with FWP and BOR. Can be done very closely together. They should have been here today. It's unfortunate they didn't get a call. But when can we do this with our mosquito board so that we can get started before it's too late?
I think the sooner the better.
the
I
next,
do too.
Monday in the afternoon meeting, in the afternoon.
That's best for Chuck and Elsie as far as your conversations with them? So you're thinking the 11th?
What is that the date, yeah, okay.
What about you could revise the 4th agenda and do it at 1:30 on that day?
Yeah, I think we should revise, just go to that 11th thing.
So we can kick the can down the road again.
And I can't be here the 11th.
Oh, all right. What about the 6th? Well, I might not be here then. What about the 4th? We have the time to post a revised agenda.
I think it's a place to start.
Is
I
that
do
okay with
too.
you, Elaine, the 4th?
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm with you, Elaine. I don't think that it's wise to just keep waiting and putting
Mm-mm.
things off.
Mosquitoes are just,
Right, yeah, after last year, I think
I'll
that's
check with Tammy,
irresponsible.
but I think we could probably have it there to 1:30. I'll check with her on that.
you know, Lisa, then if you just bring them to me at the next meeting,
Sure.
then you can have them.
Actually, you wouldn't even have to do a revised agenda. What we could do instead is post an agenda for the mosquito board at 1:30 next Monday.
That's true.
Yeah, because it isn't a commission, meeting, it's a mosquito board meeting. So I would suggest that. if the fourth still works at 1:30, since we're done at noon, we could just have a mosquito board meeting at 1:30 and just post it in 3 public places. The 3 established. Does that make sense, Franklin?
Excuse me.
I'm fine with that.
All right. I will get a hold of Carrie and let him know he works during the day, but at least keep him in the loop. Do you want me to call Elsie so that we make sure that she gets a phone call, Franklin?
Okay, you call them, and I don't think I have your numbers anymore.
I don't have Chuck's.
You can probably get that.
Okay,
I-
it's not on the board list.
No, I had a hard time getting, I forget, I don't know if I have it written down anywhere or not, but I tried and tried and tried. And somebody finally, I did get a number finally.
Is it on the voter registration card?
You know what, I'll just call those board members so that way we know they've been called and let them know what we're doing. And, you take care of that agenda for the mosquito board. What should be on there is that a decision on signing the contract so that we're able to do that. And then, I think that would be the only action item. Setting up a meeting doesn't have to be agended.
Do we need John there?
I don't think so. I can certainly let them know about it, but they should have been here today. I just hate to keep, you know, we didn't do our job. So we're gonna ask you to come back. I just think that's bad.
How are you guys? It's been a while.
Hi Garrett.
Hello. Well, for some, it's been a while. Some were not that long ago.
Sorry about that. Seeing way too much of me.
No, no, not at all. Well, we talked about the SummitNet migration on Monday. It's gotten worse. The Department of Justice sent out a letter to the sheriff's office. That's the letter, you guys are more than welcome to read that. Basically what it's stating is in 2011, SummitNet started increasing rates. And SummitNet was used by you guys for internet, your state network. It's used by sheriff's office for Department of Justice information, CJIN information. So since 2011, the costs have gone constantly up. DOJ absorbed those costs so that across the board, the rates didn't go up for the sheriffs. They've exhausted all the money they've had. They went to legislation and they said, no, we're not gonna give any additional funding, which now means it's all turning on to the counties to flip the bill. Well, when I was here a year ago and telling you why it's a good idea to move off of SummitNet, one of the things I said was their cost was gonna go up. This is a prime example. Sheriff's office is estimated to be going up to $4,600 a year from $1,800 roughly now. So that's if they stay on SummitNet. Well, that's all fine and dandy, right? I had a plan to move you guys off SummitNet.
Right?
The way that we moved everybody else off SummitNet, now SummitNet's saying, nope, it's not secure enough, so we're not gonna allow you to, purchase these expensive units to do this anymore. Department of Justice, once again, doesn't have money to purchase them. So now we're at a point of, we need to find something new in order to do these secure connections that we need to be CJIN certified, CJIN qualified for it. The state of Montana, Department of Justice found a way to do that for a fraction of a cost. It's like $150 for this unit when they're spending $1,000 to $1,200 for their old way. It's more stable, it's more secure, and it's easier to configure. So they've all proved in concept that this is all gonna work. Well, ITSD is saying, well, we need to go through our testing to make sure it works. Because what's happening is we have all these agencies moving off of SummitNet, which is costing ITSD a lot of money. So they're doing everything they can to try to stonewall anybody from moving off of it, which is why we had those letters that went out to you guys saying, we're much better, we're not doing any of this. Well, it's not the case. By moving you guys off onto your own ISP, it does give us the freedom to do that. The concern I had, and I just got off the phone, so I'm a little late, I apologize for that, I just got off the phone with the Department of Justice, and there is no mandate or state law that says that the Department of Justice has to follow what SummitNet says. So they're playing the game right now, just trying to make things, smooth between the state agencies. But if it comes down to it, and SummitNet tries to block these devices, they can't do it. Department of Justice can go and move over. So when I first was coming to you, it was going to be, we need to do something to try to figure out how to get SummitNet so they can't hold us hostage. And now it's more of a, they can't hold us hostage, but it could put us into a little bit of a bind in very short term. So remember I told you we need to get a letter drafted 30 days before? These rate increases are supposed to be July 1. So what we need to do is get that letter drafted, have you guys send it saying, we will be off SummitNet June 30th. Plain and simple.
Okay,
That way, you know, we don't have to worry about this rate increase. And we'll make sure from our end that we have everybody moved over to the new connections before then, just so we don't incur these extra charges.
Would you send it certified just to make sure they did get it?
You could. I mean, basically what they're doing is they're ignoring them. If you sit there and send a letter and say, you know, we're moving off in 30 days, terminate, they're still gonna bill you. Because they're hoping you'll just pay the bill, because that's what a lot of counties have been doing. So it's important that you word in there that, you know, we're not paying a bill after this time. We are off that connection. Here's our notice. You know, however commissioners wanna word that, it has to be you guys that send it though. Because it used to be anybody that was on their list, and then they changed it because people were moving off too easily and made it to where it has to come from the commissioners on county letterhead. I mean, whole officialness. And then they choose on whether or not to listen and come up with an excuse why it takes so long to move you off. But I think if
Yeah.
we sent it now, it's gonna be our best bet.
I can have it drafted by Monday.
Okay.
If you could send me a template or somebody else's letter,
Yeah.
that would be great, just to make sure I have the wording.
Yeah, I'll come up with something for you, but
Thank you.
I apologize that I had to take up your time for this, but it's important to know because the SummitNet is actively going out to other counties and telling them that they're, you know, so much better, things are gonna be cheaper. You guys have a lot of contacts with the other counties and, you know, if something's said to you, you can say, well, here's what actually happened to us. I'm not trying to badmouth the state, I'm not trying to take ITSD out of business, but if they're sitting there saying that it's gonna impact public safety, something needs to be done.
Mhm.
Because that's a huge, and really it comes down to budgets for you guys too. Their budgets got cut, so they're trying to find ways to make money. Well, last I checked, everybody's budgets have pretty much been cut due to, you know, recessions and everything else that has happened. So sitting there and trying to have you guys foot the bill for their problem that's been obviously since 2011, you know, it just doesn't seem fair. And this is a good solution. I have multiple counties on it, it's working great.
So what this does, Garrett, is it solidifies the decision we already made, and we solidified again Monday. This is just another solidification of all that.
And it's giving them the written, that you have to put it in writing at some point anyway. This just puts it in writing now. And
Okay.
letting them know that you're not gonna sit there and be bullied by it, because that's what they're trying to do. Historically, that's what it's been. We're gonna make it difficult to move off, that way it's too much work and you'll just stay where you're at. And it's a classic IT paradox. We don't move because we're afraid of what'll happen if we move. Well, I can tell you, it's gonna be better for everybody. It really is. And, you know, the reliability and all that does come into play, but in Townsend, there's one ISP here really anyway. They're gonna use the same carrier for their stuff. If that carrier's down, I don't care if you're on the state or you're on your own personal or you're at your house, you're not gonna have it. So,
And if it had been working fine for us, then, you know, we might even not be having this conversation.
right,
The issue that was brought up Monday was mostly from the sheriff's department and from Mike. They're blocked, the state blocks them, so you've got detectives or deputies trying to do investigations. They can't get to the sites they need. In order to get the block lifted, it's a lengthy process that just keeps them from being able to do what they need to do to get these cases taken care of. So that's the number one reason.
and Mike got
Just as a
blocked trying to get a
reminder.
water fountain.
Right, yeah, yeah.
You're kidding.
No, because it's shopping. They block all kinds of categories with shopping or ads or, I mean, he was just trying to go look at water fountain and got blocked. That was when we were here, you know, whatever, a year ago, whenever it was, I was last here, that's what our conversation was, is you wanted the ability to have control of your network. It's the only way to do it, otherwise it's under ITSD still. And rumors of the grapevine is that ITSD at some point was actually gonna require a letter to be signed by you guys that you're gonna follow. You know, for network security side, well, they weren't gonna give any guidelines. So you're basically
Oh.
blanket signing a document that says you're gonna be secure, but yet they don't give any documentation on what you need to do to secure. So, it's like, man, I would never sign that because you have no guidelines.
No, which means you're giving up any defense.
Right, that's exactly what it is. They're covering their own tails if something happens.
And they've left it open-ended.
Right. Yeah, you guys are taking on all the liability, and it's like, that is terrible. I'd rather have, okay, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and that's what it is with Seagen. That's what, what we're doing over the sheriff's office this week, is making it so they're in Seagen compliance. But here's the list of stuff you need to do in order to be in Seagen compliance. When you get audited, this is what we're checking.
Yeah,
Okay, not a problem, we'll make it happen, but I just need to know, the guidelines of how you want it, so. I don't know what else to say other than there's some really big squabbling going on within Department of Justice and ITSD, and it has been brewing for some time. It's just now at its popping point because the state legislation said we're not giving you money. I think the DOJ was asking for like $400,000 to keep the cost level for all law enforcement, and
wow.
state legislation shot it down. So, and it got bad enough that ITSD's budget got cut too. They're actually going back and seeing if they can find past billing mistakes so they can bill for things in the past that didn't get billed properly.
That's
Wow.
really digging.
It is
Yeah.
digging. They're hurting, which is why they don't want the counties to move off, because it really is their cash cow. They're making a ton of money off of SummitNet.
And I feel bad, there's people that work there and have built their career there, and they've been very, very good when I have called. But they have not been able to service the county in the way that we need, that's the bottom line.
Right.
So, before I work on the letter, is there anything from you guys that you wanna just stay with SummitNet? And
Why would we?
I have no idea. I can't think of a single argument, but I don't wanna put the work in.
As long as we're okay with Seagen, that's the main thing.
Yeah, and this is what I've done elsewhere, and I just, like I said, I got off the phone with the DOJ, they're all for, because they're gonna have a huge savings. Every agency that moves off of SummitNet saves them money. So that's why, it was about a year ago, the sheriffs received other letters saying, hey, now's a good time to move off of SummitNet. And some took advantage of that, which is the other ones that we've moved over, and then some, are now getting this letter, and that's like, oh,
Yeah.
3 times the amount of money that we were spending.
Yeah,
And those charges don't increase if you move over to an ISP, because they don't have to carry some of the charges that they're getting billed. So, there is, the only thing the state has that I totally agree with is their network is very secure. They put in a lot of money on infrastructure, they put a lot of money in on the security side, but it's more troublesome than anything, because now you can't have people that need to go do their job. And if you're blocking a maintenance guy from hitting a water fountain site, that's, in my mind, that's pretty bad. I can understand deputies, because they have to go to the places none of us really wanna go, kiddie porn sites, or, all these places on the internet that normal people probably would never attend. So I understand that portion of it, and all those sites do have major threats, because usually those sites are ran by hackers, so the software that gets installed is not legitimate at all. So from a network security standpoint, very risky. But you guys have spent the money on the firewalls, which is why I put those in and not just leaving you out there. And the effort you're putting in is gonna block it to a reasonable standard, and it's reasonable enough for actually DOJ and Seagen, HIPAA, so I'm not concerned from the security standpoint. The biggest security risk is always end user clicking on something that, they shouldn't have clicked on, so. I don't have any other reason why you would be best to stay on some of it.
and just to solidify your credibility, what's your background prior to IT?
Law enforcement. I was in law enforcement for 7 years and I was in IT law enforcement. I actually did get to do the kiddie porn stuff, because when I was in law enforcement, they didn't have detectives assigned to internet crimes. It wasn't that big of a deal. That was 2000, early 2000. That came in later, so I've done my fair share of investigations on, on the IT side of things, and it's not pleasant. It has to be done, and the crimes have only gone up. But when you have the bad guys can go places you can't go, you can't do your job. You can't find them. How do you enforce that law? By the time you do find them, because you got all the exemptions done, they're done and moved on somewhere else committing crime. So time's usually of a factor in an investigation like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if nothing else, sheriff's office should be off. If you guys really like SummitNet, you guys should stay on it. But I can't recommend that, because it's not as good for you guys.
And I think it's better for us in our relationship with you being our IT to all be the same.
I agree. It makes it easier. And if you had multiple choices of an internet provider, we may be having a different conversation. But in the end, you have CenturyLink. They have CenturyLink. If none of them are down, everybody's down. And I had the same conversation in Mineral County. They have Blackfoot. So state uses Blackfoot line for there, so if Blackfoot's down, well, it's down for them as well. No different. So, in Montana, that's pretty much how it is in rural Montana. You get Johnny Backhoe driver out there, you know, driving a fence post or something, next thing you know, they cut the fiber line. Whole county's down, whole half state's down.
Literally, yeah.
Because everybody's lines run through the same thing regardless of the carrier you're on. You know, and then you got the sheriff's office trying to save money because they're putting in a new 911 system. Well, you know, you guys have to have the 911 system too, because that's a huge liability if you don't have that. So any place you can save money, and if you're already paying more for service that you're not happy with, then it doesn't make sense to stay with them, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, this is a good move. It's necessary and it'll save us money and it'll make us work better.
I think so. I think everybody will be very happy with it. I haven't had anybody that I've done this to say, you know, I wish I wouldn't have done that. They've all been happy and just move on and do their job. So, is
Excellent.
there any other questions that I can answer?
Not for me.
Me either.
Okay, I'll see if I can get some material for you to put in that letter, and you can figure out what you want to put in there.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Thank you guys for your time, I
Thanks.
appreciate it. You're welcome.
You've been working with the sheriff and all this here stuff.
Yeah. Brenda and I, actually, she was already fired up to try to send, just tell them that they were gonna have all their siege requests go through the highway patrol, which would have actually hurt our relationship with DOJ, because they're the ones that would get the highway patrol request. So I said, before you do that, let me see what we can get this way
Right.
first. So she's in agreement that this is what needs to happen, so. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Garrett.
You're welcome.
This is just in our office to go over and see it. Thanks, Aaron.
You know, mosquitoes probably don't seem like a big thing to a lot of people right now. But let me tell you, 2 months down the road, and it will,
No kidding. Yeah,
you know, or 3.
yeah.
I just remembered last year how bad it got.
Yeah, I wanna avoid that.
I can't even work out in the yard.
No, and it's, you know, it hits the economy. You got people who, you know, can't come to the events going on, the fair. It's bad for the animals, it reduces cattle weight. I mean, you know, you can just go down the list. I'm sure it affects the hogs. So it's just not something we wanna fool around with. Do we have an 11 o'clock?
Yeah.
Yeah, she gave me a letter here to read off.
She's not coming?
Is she coming?
Says, Frank Zucker, Chairman of Brevard County Commissioners.
Would you, before you start reading it, would you make copies so we all can have it?
I'd like a copy as well of the entire packet.
Okay, those are MCA codes there. You wouldn't have to make those right now, unless you wanted to.
I would like whatever
I
it
want
is.
the whole pack.
Yeah,
Just give me the packet, Frank, and I'll get some copies.
so I would like an answer to mine and Elaine's questions. Is she not coming? Or is she coming?
No,
She is not
she's
coming.
not coming.
Do you
That's
know
what I was
why?
gonna- Well, I was starting to read off there.
Okay.
My stomach is growling. I apologize. I can't get it to quit.
No
it's just-
problem.
When Garrett was here, it started again, I thought, oh my gosh. So how do you get your stomach to quit growling? Feed it. Well, I don't want to do that right now.
I do that sometimes, you just rumble.
Oh, that's here today. I thought, my word. They probably can't even hear Garrett because of my stomach. Mm.
I think with this, with John, we're simple, is, I think we're getting on the right track on those mosquitoes.
Mhm.
I think it's gonna give us an opportunity to do some comparisons, so that down the road, we can make the best possible decision, having all the facts in front of us.
Mhm.
It's a good opportunity for us for this year.
And I think John will do a good job for us, I really do.
I do too. I do too. I think there's a bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. On a positive note, that was a pretty good rain we had last night.
Yes, it was.
Oh, did you?
You didn't get it?
No, we got a little, but we didn't get,
It was nice.
well, I heard one said it was, somebody, I was talking to somebody on the phone, that says it's raining hard over this area. Ah.
You didn't keep it up long enough, but
Mhm.
every little bit helps.
Oh, yeah, we got, oh. Nothing was wet, I mean, you can tell they're just little showers, all it was.
We've got water standing.
Oh, is that right?
Do you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just after dark,
Mm-hmm.
okay. You see that storm coming in and maybe south line, you got somebody kind of just splitting, all of a sudden you can just see, opening right up through the clouds there.
Hmm. Are you going to the extravaganza?
What extravaganza? You mean this weekend?
No, I
Extravaganza.
mean tonight.
Oh, no.
Let's start.
I wish I could. We have dress rehearsal
Oh.
tonight for the extravaganza this
Up
weekend.
here.
Yeah.
How's it coming?
Good. With Judy.
She is good. There's
Oh my
no two ways
gosh.
about it.
She's gonna do a piece tonight that, it had me bawling last night. It's good. It's really good. So
Because
she's
it's
gonna.
so touching.
Mhm. Yeah. It's gonna have, of course, her humor, but then also a very, just really well done piece.
One smart lady and very talented. Woo.
I know it. Yeah, she's amazing.
I'd like to have the talent that she's got in one little finger.
No
You
kidding.
know.
Yeah. Well, and she's working with a bunch of just, untalented hacks, and she has absolute grace in dealing with us. It's really, really a testament to her. At one point, I said to, I think it was Vic or John Raines or somebody, or Judy, all she's doing tonight is herding cats, and that was about it. Everybody was just off doing their own thing.
So what are you wearing?
50s outfit.
Poodle skirt?
No, I didn't get a poodle skirt, it didn't really fit with my skit. So. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, it should be fun.
It always is.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing that, Ann.
Yeah, thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we go ahead and read it off.
Yep, go ahead.
Frank Suffolk, Chairman of Broward County Commissioners. On Monday, April 27th, 2015, I was requested to submit a proposal by Commissioner Laura Over concerning the public safety cash reserves. I previously addressed this issue to the board prior to the budget being set for fiscal year 2015. In my letter, I was very clear that the proposed budget was not adequately funded and that the process being used was dwindling the cash reserves. At that time, the commissioners did not address my letter and sent the budget without consideration to the content of my letter. Now you want me to come up with the funding to address the issue of not enough cash reserves to carry the public safety funds through the next fiscal year. No other fund is lacking cash reserves due to the fact that they were properly funded by your board. If the public safety fund had been adequately funded as requested, it would not be in this situation. The excuse that the public safety fund was mismanaged is enormous. I have never exceeded my expenditure budget and usually bring in more revenue exceeding my revenue budget. This is the first time the board has not set the proper cash reserves for one of the funds that I'm responsible for, and then come back to me and ask me how I'm going to fix it. So therefore, it is my proposal that the Broadwater County Commissioners, the Budgeting Authority of Broadwater County properly fund the Public Safety Fund as requested in my letter prior to your board setting the fiscal year 2015 budget. There's the letter, sure. I guess these are all just different codes here. Anyway, I guess the proposal is that we fix the cash reserve that was, I remember there years ago when Paul and Mako said that for every dollar you take out, it takes $2 to replace it back.
So with your comment, if you would please expand on it, what money are you referring to that was taken out? So we didn't touch her budget.
There's the cash reserve there several years ago, and it's never been replaced. Well, I think the other day she said that that 33%, and hers was, I can't remember if she said 3 or 10%, something like that.
Okay, several years ago you said cash reserves were taken away. When was that? Because I don't recall it ever being done.
That was before I was on. I just remember being at
If
one
you're
of those
gonna
meetings.
make that statement,
I remember being at one of those meetings when it was said by Mako that when he, I don't know how it was worded stuff, but for every dollar taken out, it takes 2 to replace it back.
and that was a correct comment, however, no money was taken out. If you're gonna debate that, you need to bring something with you to support your claims, because right now they are false. No money has been taken out of her budget, period, as long as I've been here. Prior to that, I don't know anything that was done. So, as far as the cash reserves, it has never been the practice of this commission, again, as long as I've been here, that the commission fills in those reserves. That is up to the department head or the elected official of that department. Elaine, please correct me if I'm
No,
wrong.
you're correct. 100%.
So, it is her responsibility to budget in such a way that she has the funds to keep her staff paid until the taxes come in November.
Well,
That's how it
I can
works.
remember her saying something that it wasn't there, it wasn't right.
She didn't do it. That's what wasn't right. If you're gonna defend Brenda, that's fine. She should be here to defend her budget on behalf of her staff. I'm flabbergasted by this move, because the persons that are being abused by this letter and the actions of that department are her staff. Because right now, we don't have the money in her budget to pay her staff because of her budgeting. She should be here on their behalf, fighting for her staff, and that she is not is offensive.
Well, and the other thing is, we asked her to come in periodically to work with us, to make sure that this wasn't happening.
That's absolutely true,
She hasn't shown.
not once. no. We tried to work with Wynn, and she said, go ahead. We worked with Wynn while she was off hunting. We got an email that said, how dare you work with Wynn on the budget? If she doesn't understand it, we should be working with somebody who does. She should empower Wynn to help her, especially now when she's not feeling well. I am gonna propose a solution. I am going to request with this solution, I'm also gonna take it to Corey and to Wynn. I'm gonna ask that with this solution or proposal, that if there is a debate, or something to be said, that it is substantive, not just no. And the reason I'm gonna bring it up today is because we're at the 11th hour again for Brenda's staff. Those deputies and control and coroner officers are all looking at July 1st. There's $14,000 to pay all of them until taxes come in November. That is not what we do for our staff in any department. They've got families, they've got children, they are dedicating themselves to the safety of this county, and I, for one, will not continue to see them discarded in this way. So I have 7 copies. Doesn't look like we'll need all 7. So this is the first 2 pages. I'll give you a set for Anne. Whoops, here, let me just give you these 2. I'll take those 2, and there you go. What this is, I went through Brenda's budget, and it was the same budget that we went through as a commission 2 weeks ago. What I did is I went through, one thing that was done, and it was questioned from within her staff as well as by accounting and this commission. Why were her expenditures exploded and ballooned far beyond what they had been in previous years? And why was the revenue guesstimated to be so low? It was really a budget that was out of whack. So what I did is I went through the expenses and looked at which line items are far below what was guesstimated for the budget. And then what I did is I took what it would be at 75%, which is the point we were reviewing the budget, and then added to that the additional on top of that that's still to be spent. So the first paragraph or grouping here is just for deputies.
Tell me what's 370 and what's 380.
370.
Right there.
I don't
can't
know.
remember.
I can go get my bars book. I'll do that. I'll be right back.
Well, hold it. I got a budget in front of me, it'll show.
Oh, perfect. So, you know what, I'll just wait till you find those.
No, go ahead, I'll listen.
No, I'll wait. So I'm curious too now.
$370's travel, $380's training.
All right. So the first column is just the object code, then it's the budget, the current budget, and that is the revised budget that we did with the budget amendment 6 or 7 weeks ago. YDT is year to date, that's what's been spent at this point, and that really should be at 75% of the current. That's in the next column, and then the difference is what's left beyond that. The total is $106,221. And what I did is I subtracted from that what 2 more months of expenses would be. So I divided by 1/6 or 2/12 and subtracted that. So there is an excess of $88,518. So object code 420114, that is the category we were alarmed at that had a negative 49,000, that fund is part of a contract with Forest Service and BOR. There was nothing budgeted for reserve deputies because at the time we knew it was illegal, even though we couldn't get the practice to stop. And you can see the current budget on that is 0. The expenditures at negative 49 are actually all going to be reimbursed by Forest Service and BOR, and they're on a federal fiscal year, so that is September to October, October to September. So that should zero out.
420114 is all Forest Service and BLM.
Yeah,
Or
BOR, yep, and it will be reimbursed, so that'll be 0. So the next category is control. Same thing, a lot was budgeted, not as much was spent. The total left over beyond the 75% is almost 23,000, minus 2 months' worth of expenses, leaves us with 19,000 to work with.
Never mind, I see.
I know this is, I know it because I've been messing with it, but I would imagine it's tough to try and decipher at this point. The next line is 420000. Those are the radios. There's 10,000 sitting there. I would imagine putting together a CIP is a better move, but that, I just left it. The next category is coroners. So the top one is control. This one is coroner. Same thing, they have a total surplus of 17,000 on page 2, minus the difference didn't make it to this sheet, but you had 17,000 minus 14, so it's about 3,000. So if you add the 88, the 3, the 20, the 19, you get 121,923 of expenses planned for that are over and above one this year. So this would just be additional expenses past June 30th. That makes sense. Radios are not included. Then I went to the cash page, the cash that the departments have. Brenda started the year with $294,000 cash. This is line 3 on page 2. As of 4/14, she had 71,662. According to Debbie, she's burned through some of that in just the last week. But because this is dated, I used that number, 71,662, and came up with money she has at this point of 193,585. Then I went to a revenue sheet, and I looked at where she's received revenue that she didn't budget or expect at the time. Again, the budgeted line column, received year to date, over what was expected, and then we were supposed to be at 25%, so over that 25%. And we come up with additional revenue, unexpected, of 8736. So added that to our 193, and we come up with 202,321. That's just from the public safety budget that we have for July 1 through the end of the year. Here's the thing. Her personnel costs, and that's where my focus is her personnel. 33% of her total personnel cost, so I took the total budgeted for all personnel and divided by, or multiplied by 33%, and came up with 297,142 is what she needs to pay her staff through when taxes come in November. So we're a little bit shy. So, then after the line, that is planned, the second part of this plan. The detention center actually does have 33% reserves. They don't need it. They don't rely on mills to fund their operations. They rely on a monthly payment from DOC, Lewis and Clark County, Cascade County, wherever, to pay because they are a revenue generating department. They have mills, they don't rely on those mills. So at the end of last year, they had a surplus in their account of $129,598. That was over and above their 33% reserves. Their cash over 33% as of 4/14 was $126,838. So they've got,
That's over the 33.
exactly, that is their surplus today. So, page 2, let me give you page 2. And you get one too. Page 2, I did the same thing. I looked at some of the details. There are some bills,